Hello, everyone. This is Ellen Avery. I am the medical advisor for the Ketogenic Diet with Nutricia. Thank you all for joining us for our webinar today, the MCT Oil Ketogenic Diet for the Management of Epilepsy. Before we begin today, I would like to give you all a little bit of background on Keto University. Keto University began as a 3-day live conference, but given the circumstances, we've transitioned it into a series of webinar events. These webinars are about 10 webinars that we've had going on so far. We are on our 7th webinar now, given by Vanessa Aldaz, and they are a series of webinars on the medical ketogenic diet, and they vary in topic, as you can see. We've got webinars from ketones to cooking, from vitamin and mineral supplementation to the fundamentals of the medical ketogenic diet. We look forward to bringing you these webinars throughout our Keto University series. I would like to introduce our speaker today, Ms. Vanessa Aldaz. Vanessa received her Bachelor of Science degree in Biochemistry and Cell Biology from the University of California in San Diego. She pursued her master's degree in Nutrition and Public Health from Loma Linda University. And for almost the past 17 years, Vanessa has been providing nutrition services to children with intractable epilepsy and other disorders at a major children's hospital in San Diego. She has found a true passion for the ketogenic diet, its mechanism and efficacy as she's been working there. She provides support and mentorship to other dietitians in training of the ketogenic diet, including speaking at several conferences and meetings. She hopes to continue training other dietitians and inspiring them to have a similar passion for this amazing medical nutrition therapy. Throughout the webinar, I encourage you, if you have questions, to please put them in our Q&A box that you'll find on the right-hand side of your screen. And with that, I'm going to pass off our webinar presentation to our speaker, Vanessa.
Thank you, Ellen. So welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to join us today as we discuss the MCT oil diet for the management of epilepsy. I am deeply grateful for the opportunity to share this with you. Here's my disclosure. So to begin, at the end of this talk, you will be able to describe the MCT oil diet and its history, discover the benefits of MCT oil diet, its mechanisms, and debunk a few common misconceptions. You will also learn to identify patients who are ideal candidates for the MCT oil diet for epilepsy. You will also learn how to calculate the MCT oil diet and implement a meal plan, and discuss more good reasons for using the MCT oil. But first, I will briefly walk you through some background history of the MCT oil diet and mechanism of action. So what is the MCT oil diet? It is still a high-fat, low-carbohydrate, adequate protein ketogenic diet. It primarily focuses on higher amounts of MCT oil to achieve ketosis. It uses MCT oil in place of the larger amounts of cream, butter, or other long-chain triglycerides in other diets in order to increase palatability while also allowing more room for carbohydrates and protein. It is based on percentages of calories, not ratios. So an example of a breakdown would be anywhere between 30 to 60% MCT oil of total calories, 10% carbs, 12% protein, and 18 to 48% long-chain triglycerides. When calculating the macronutrient, there is no need to restrict calories. And although nowadays it is rare that we fluid restrict on any keto diet, it's still good to point out that originally it was never necessary to fluid restrict on this diet to achieve ketosis. Also, no food scales are needed. If desired, patients can focus on household measurements. So Amidst the surge in popular use of pharmacotherapy in the 1960s, the MCT oil diet was developed as a means to improve diet therapy. The main reason for attempting to develop an alternative diet to the classical 4-to-1 ratio diet was to improve its reported lack of palatability due to its high content of long-chain triglycerides and very low-carb content. So in 1971, Huttenlocher and his team developed a new form of the ketogenic diet, giving birth to the MCT oil diet. It was easier to prepare as no food scales were needed. One could use household measures, and it was less restrictive and more palatable and just as efficacious. So, as you can see on this slide, Huttenlocher started at his MCT oil diet at about 60% total calories and up to 70% MCT oil. Then in 1989, Schwartz modified the original MCT oil diet using less of the MCT oil, about 30 to 40%, for improving toleration. This diet was also known as the Radcliffe diet, but the modification continued. So very few, if any, centers in the United States were using this version of the diet by the 1990s, and therefore San Diego Troner team tweaked it just slightly. However, because the MCT oil diet was thought to be less tolerated, causing GI symptoms like abdominal pain, bloating, and diarrhea, and also less dietitians were trained for its use in implementation of this diet. So Troner's team adjusted a few of the macros as we see here. So mainly starting at a goal of 30% MCT oil, so lower and going up slowly with the MCT oil, and working up as needed to a higher percent, just enough to maintain desired therapeutic ketone levels. So the MCT oil was increased individually to up to 45, in rare cases up to 50% as needed, and is tolerated by the patient to a higher percent during the fine-tuning stages. So despite several smaller non-randomized studies reporting efficacy, such as articles published by Huttenlocher, Schwartz, Troner, Sills, Freeman, Liu, the MCT oil diet has not gained as much popularity as the classic ketogenic here in the United States. In 2008 and 2009, Neil's group in the UK published the first largest randomized trial comparing the efficacy of both diets, the classic and the MCT diet, demonstrating that both diets were equally efficacious and both had their place in the treatment of childhood epilepsy. So the take-home message here, another way of looking at it, is that the MCT diet variances is mainly there to ensure good toleration and less to no GI distress. Thus, choose your percent MCT goal, starting with 30% of total calories ideally, as this is necessary for efficacy. And then once you are at the fine-tuning stages, you can adjust up and increase MCT oil slowly if an increase in ketosis is absolutely necessary, so as long as your patient tolerates that increased amount. So what is this MCT? What is MCT oil? It's a medium-chain fatty acid ester of glycerol. It is small water-soluble lipids, anywhere between 6 and 12 carbon atoms. Mainly the C8 and C10 are transported into mitochondria, where they are metabolized to acetoacetate and beta-hydroxybutyrate, therefore making it ketogenic. It's derived from fractionated coconut oil or palm kernel oil or camphor tree drupes. And its increased ketone production yields more ketones per kilocalorie of energy compared to LCTs. Also, using pharmaceutical grade or pure MCT oil supplement in the MCT oil diet is recommended for best outcomes. So MCT oil is a bland, tasteless oil. And chemically, it is found that C8 is an oily clear liquid, but many MCT oils available might be a blend of C8 and C10, and in some of them, a very tiny small amount of C12. And you'll still find it in a clear liquid form. Nutritionally, it contains no essential fatty acids and has a caloric density of 8.3 calories per gram or 7.7 calories per milliliter. So keep this in mind later when we go through the calculations. There are some popular pure MCT oil brands, can be the MCT Gold now, Nestle. There are a lot more available now. There's also emulsified forms such as Liquigen or Beta Quick. It's also found in a powdered form. Now, these other forms allows for more ways to blend them into foods and recipes. Such, for example, the Liquigen can be mixed into heavy cream and then frozen into little ice cubes. Also, please note that MCT oil is not the same as coconut oil, and that's important to point out and educate your patients on. So how does MCT oil make ketones so quickly, right? So this is the mechanism. MCT oil is rapidly absorbed from small intestine intact or following hydrolysis into portal circulation via albumin and to the liver. And these are because they're smaller lengths of fat. It doesn't require pancreatic enzymes or bile salts for digestion or absorption. And then it's taken up by the liver cells and converted to medium-chain fatty acyl coenzyme A, which enters the mitochondria without the aid of carnitine, as do other long-chain fats do. And in the liver, the mitochondria then therefore converts the oil to ketone bodies, therefore making it rapidly ketogenic. How keto-inducing is MCT oil? So in one study, the urine ketone level was shown to be equal to the classic ketogenic diet and increased compared to the low glycemic and modified Atkins diet. In another study, showed that beta-hydroxybutyrate to be lower compared to the classic ketogenic diet after 3, 6, and 12 months on the diet. Other studies have demonstrated a wide range in individual serum acetoacetate and beta-hydroxybutyric acid levels, where some individuals on MCT diet levels exceeded those of the classic ketogenic diet. But exact mechanisms of action has not proved exactly that a higher level of ketosis always correlates with better seizure control. So for example, in the MAD and the low glycemic index treatment, ketosis may not be a hallmark of those diets, but they still have shown positive results on seizure reduction. In my experience, a 30% MCT oil diet can achieve a serum beta-hydroxybutyrate level between 3 and 6 millimoles per liter, or moderate to large urine ketones on a ketone strip. So benefits, limitations, and myths about the ketogenic diet. So some of the benefits is that it allows for more carbohydrates. Remember, you're calculating anywhere between 5 to 10% of total calories. Therefore, it's going to increase the palatability of the diet. It's going to allow more protein, 10 to 15% from total daily calories, or 2 times the RDA for that age. There's more room for nutrient-rich foods, including fruits, vegetables, and other superfoods. Patients find it less restrictive and easier to transition to and tend to be more compliant if their needs are being met. Also, if you have a patient in the ICU for fires, you can add 3 milliliters 3 times a day enterally when, for example, there's a high carbohydrate content of medications that cannot be decreased or taken out. So it's a quick and efficient way to boost those ketones. Other benefits include, so according to a paper published by Liu in 2008, since patients consume more carbs and protein, they need less overall supplements, and it was found that they also have better growth compared to the classic ketogenic diet patients. They also noted that there were fewer incidents of renal stones, hypoglycemia, ketoacidosis, low bone density, and growth retardation. Little to no effects on cholesterol and triglycerides as compared to the classic ketogenic diet. So as compared to long-chain triglycerides, MCT oil is far less likely to be stored in adipose tissue and don't give rise to ectopic fat metabolites. that promote insulin resistance and inflammations, and it's less likely to activate macrophages. Also, good thing about a great benefit of the MCT oil is constipation is not as common on this diet, maybe due to its laxative effect of the MCT, but maybe also because there's more room for those higher fiber foods. So these are side effects, common side effects of the MCT oil are GI symptoms, which may include abdominal pain or cramping, diarrhea, irritability, nausea, vomiting, and the above ones may be due to rapid hydrolysis of MCT in the gut or rapid ingestion, in other words, too much or too quick. And these can all be resolved or avoided by introducing the MCT oil very gradually. So there are very few limitations to this MCT oil diet. So just be aware of these when counseling your patients on the MCT oil. So all of these can be carefully avoided. So it can be corrosive to some plastics, mainly like the G-tube tubing and balloons. So it's necessary to flush the tube well with water after adding it. Regular MCT oil separates from formulas and liquids. So if they're G-tube fed, for example, giving it as a bolus and then adding water flush works better to ensure that they are getting the MCT oil. Other than that, another way to avoid this is using an emulsified form of the MCT oil. Third, it has a low smoke point. So one cannot heat or cook with MCT oil like the other long chain fats. So don't cook on high heat, so no frying. Also, fewer dietitians are trained on this diet, so maybe fewer centers are offering it to their ketogenic diet for epilepsy management. And less recipes and resources are found for those on the MCT oil diet in comparison to the other keto diets. But if you go to matthewsfriends.org, they have many great recipes and videos that you might find helpful. It may be expensive, as not many insurances may cover the MCT oil, but nowadays Costco, Amazon sells it for very affordable prices. Now, overall, right, common misconceptions of the MCT and ketogenic diets, they say it's not healthy, it's difficult to follow, but we all know if it's supervised by a keto team and we monitor for those side effects, our patients are going to do well. So let me focus on too much MCT oil can't be tolerated. So MCT oil diet allows for another way to adhere to a ketogenic diet using household measurements and food exchange lists or using a gram scale if desired. They can go on, find all these other recipes to make it a lot more tolerable and find recipes. MCT oil needs to be added gradually and slowly for best toleration. So again, it's a myth that it can't be tolerated. The most important thing is adding it gradually, slowly, and there will be maybe some patients that can't. So just keep that in mind. MCT oil has no essential fatty acids and may cause essential fatty acid deficiency. So should I be worried? No. There has been a concern in the past in regards to infants and MCT oil diet due to its lack of essential fatty acids. However, this has no effect as the MCT oil only comprises about 40% of total calories. In addition, you are providing another 20 to 30% of calories or more from long-chain triglycerides, high enough to include very adequate amounts of essential fatty acids. So, but if you are going to go higher than the 40, so say 60 to 70% of calories from MCT, you may need to supplement with an essential fatty acid, about 1 to 2% of your total calories. As we all know, with all ketogenic diets, we do need to supplement. So nutritional deficiency is a risk in patients with medical conditions such as intractable epilepsy, who may already have compromised nutritional status as a result of pre-existing feeding difficulties and use of multiple anti-epileptic drugs known to decrease nutrient absorption. Therefore, like all medical ketogenic diets, the MCT oil keto diet must be supplemented with vitamins, minerals, trace elements to meet 100% of GRI. And very important to assess any of the serum levels, especially the magnesium on this diet. So this was a quote extrapolated from the Neil published paper from 2008. The main idea is that MCT oil diet should not be viewed as inferior. So selecting the ideal candidate for the MCT oil diet. So choose an MCT oil diet for any drug-resistant intractable epilepsy condition, a GLUT1 or PDHD patient. Choose an MCT oil diet for a child or adolescent or adult with a larger appetite or those that prefer more carbohydrates. It's also a great option for those with multiple allergies, whether they're orally fed or enterally fed only. The MCT oil not only allows for more solid food carbohydrates, but allows for the use of any hypoallergenic formulas that may contain more carbohydrate. So when used with MCT oil to allow patients to reach ketosis. You can choose an MCT oil diet if whole foods or blended diet is desired. So why is this a good option for those on a whole foods or home blended diet? Because MCT allows more room for carbohydrate options. One can formulate a meal plan composed of a variety of nutrient-rich carbohydrate foods that families may desire, such as some families might desire more superfoods with many health benefits, and they contain more water content by giving more of these fruits and vegetables. Choose MCT oil if you have a child on a classic ketogenic diet on a higher ratio and they desire a more liberal approach. Choose MCT oil diet if the patient prefers to use household measures versus a food scale. Choose MCT oil if the patient has pre-existing hyperlipidemia. Choose an MCT oil diet if a patient has pre-existing chronic constipation or issues with malabsorption, or if they've already lost a lot of weight or need extra calories. You may add it as a small doses or also for an energy boost or use it in a fat bomb. So they're also a quick and easy way to increase those ketones by adding MCT oil. So now we will go over how to actually calculate the MCT oil diet, the proper way, and a shortcut way that I will go over with you guys as well. So, but before we do, I think it's important to explore and explain the importance of why an MCT oil diet, why offering an MCT oil diet to your patients is beneficial. So why even use the MCT oil diet? I think it's to give more connection and add more value to your patients. And because in order to add value to your clients or patients, you need to offer them an individualized approach for providing them with more options, because not all patients are going to fit a one-size-fits-all diet. Not everyone is going to fit perfectly a MAD or a classic keto diet or even a low glycemic, for example. So by knowing how to calculate the MCT oil diet and how to manage it, you can give more value and improve quality of life for those that want something different, for those that believe that a keto diet is too hard, for those looking for more ways to include more superfoods in their diet, or simply because they want something that's less restrictive. So for me, by offering the MCT oil diet as an additional option in my program, I have been able to meet every one of my patients' needs because they're all different. And I am sure you'll also want all your patients to have the best opportunity to succeed. So it just gives your patients one more option for KD therapy. Okay, so allows them more success and innovate. So when we're talking about initiation protocols, these are going to vary from hospital to hospital, center to center. whether you start with fasting versus non-fasting. In our practice, we don't fast them. There's different protocols for how we start them, if they're going to start inpatient versus outpatient. Again, an individualized approach is best. And we've had success with both inpatient and outpatient initiation protocols. So I'm going to go through that in a little bit more detail. So most important, adding MCT oil low and slow for tolerance. So as an outpatient, low and slow. So the take-home message here is keep it even, increase weekly. Okay, so keep it even, increase weekly. So you're going to start with about 0.25 grams per kilo per day, divided evenly into meals or snacks. Or you can increase MCT oil by 5 to 10% and decrease carb on a weekly basis until your goal diet is reached. So for example, if you have a 50 kilogram teen at 1,800 calories per day with a 30% MCT oil goal, that's about 65 grams per day or 21.5 grams per meal. So by starting lower at 5% calories of MCT from calories, you're going to start with 3.6 grams of MCT oil per meal, or you can round it off to 4 grams, but it's much lower than your goal of 21.5. So go slow and have good communication for your with your patients. When you're doing inpatient, okay, you can be a little more aggressive. So the take-home rule of inpatient is our rule of a third or lower and advance as tolerated. Take-home message here for inpatient, rule of 1/3 or lower and advance as tolerated. And you want to monitor for tolerance daily. So I found this, the MCT amount startup in this published book by Tyne from 2015. So she took 0.5 grams per kilo per day divided, but the most important thing is that we want to divide that into 3 daily doses, or depending on how many meals or feeds they're getting. So you might need to divide it up more if, for example, you have a G-tube fed child that's getting 5 or 6 feeds during the day. Okay, so you want to divide it up evenly. And then you can increase it by 1 to 1.5 grams per kilo per day, or again, as tolerated. So in other words, the 1/3 or lower rule applies to, on day 1, you're going to start with a 1/3 strength of your keto shake with 1/3 of the MCT oil on day 1. If it's tolerated, then you advance to your day 2, where you're going to be giving 2/3 strength of the keto shake and then increasing your MCT oil gradually. When the patient is able to tolerate their full strength formula, then you can transition them to solids by day 3 and 4 with, again, working to your goal MCT oil as tolerated. So it's okay if they get discharged and then they're not taking 100% of that MCT oil. You can also work on that like the weekend that they're at home. Okay, but if you are starting outpatient, you want to go much slower than the inpatient startup. So how to calculate an MCT oil diet? So first of all, we need to establish caloric needs according to RDA nutrition status and individual needs. The MCT oil, you're going to provide 30 to 60% of total calories from MCT oil. Protein, you want to establish the protein needs twice the RDA, or about 10 to 15% of total calories. And for this step, you're going to be working backwards to get that percent. Now, also important to note that older kids are overweight. Those that are overweight, you might find that you need a higher percent for this. So you might find that they are at 18% of calories, or sometimes even up to 20. So carbohydrate provide 5 to 10% of total calories from carbs, and then the remainder calories from your long chain fats. So total fats, That means the LCTs and the MCTs are going to provide a total of 70 to 80%, and then you want to also establish your fluid goals. So to make this, here's a spreadsheet of what the breakdown is going to look like. So to make this a lot easier, you can also use an Excel spreadsheet with all these numbers already in place, and it can make it a lot more time efficient. Or if you're like me, you can do it by hand. So don't worry, stay focused, and I'm going to get you through this. So I'm going to use a 12-year-old kid at 40 kilos. This child's healthy and orally fed. So we're going to choose a calorie prescription of 1,600 calories, whereas we're going to choose 30% MCT oil, which is 30% of 1,600 calories is 480 calories. We're divided by 8.3 because that's its nutritional value that we discussed earlier. So if you want the grams, you divide it by 8.3, which is 57.8 grams of MCT oil, divided by 14 to get your household measures, 4 tablespoons and half a teaspoon. Or if you want to use milliliters from the get-go, you take those 480 calories divided by 7.7 to get your 62.3 milliliters of MCT oil, which is still, you convert it to household measures, 4 tablespoons and half a teaspoon. 10% carbs, right? So 10% of 1,600 is 160 divided by 4 calories to get the grams. So 40 grams of carb per day, 18% of protein, 72 grams of protein per day, 42% long-chain fats, which is 74.6 grams of fat per day. And you calculate your fluid goal using the Holiday-Sagar equation, so about 1,900 milliliters. And your total fats, LCTs and MCTs, is 72%. So how to make a meal plan from this, per meal, very important to divide all of your macronutrients evenly, including your MCT oil for each meal. Very important. Everything has to be divided evenly. So again, to get a meal plan, you can use exchange lists or carb counting apps. There are so many now out there, it's hard to keep track. Food labels and the like to help you make an actual meal plan. So we're gonna go through a couple more meal plan examples. So we'll take a 16-year-old case. So that we had a 16-year-old child with a past medical history of seizure disorder, autism, and multiple allergies. I mean, this kid was allergic to everything under the sun. So the mother of this child had already developed an array of low-carb, keto-friendly recipes that included the foods he was safe to eat and were allergy-free to the child, such as non-dairy cheeses, coconut flour tortillas, and celery soups. So he had limited oral intake, but very good appetite, and he already presented on this limited low-carb diet. So the only way to allow family to continue to have a liberal diet and it not being so restrictive was to get him into that therapeutic level of ketosis was by prescribing an MCT oil diet. So how did I apply this? I decided on 40% MCT oil diet of 2,000 calories. So that gave me 104 milliliters or about 96.4 grams per day, breaking the other macronutrients down, 10% carb, which gave him 50 grams of carb per day. And he was already pretty much on low GI carbs anyway, which was also going to help him reach that ketosis. 20% protein, which was 100 grams per day for this child, and 30% long-chain fats, so 67 grams per day. The most important thing is that we were going to increase that MCT oil slowly in order to establish toleration at each stage and checking in frequently with the family. So for this 16-year-old, his meal plan, we broke it down into what he was already eating, 3 meals and 2 snacks. Per meal, 30 milliliters of MCT oil, 15 grams of carb, 28 grams of protein, and 20 grams of fat, and then 2 snacks each at 6 milliliters of MCT oil, 2.5 grams of carb, 13 grams of protein, and 5 grams of fat. So an example of one of his meals was 2 tablespoons of MCT oil, 1 low-carb tortilla, plus 1 1/4 cups of raw spinach, and 5 tablespoons of beans or lentils, 4 ounces of chicken breast, topped with 4 teaspoons of olive oil. Like I mentioned before, you can use carb counting apps, food exchange lists, and or any other helpful tool to make actual recipes and meal plans. So this was the proper way of calculating the MCT oil diet. But don't fear, if you think it's too much work, allow me to try to make this a little bit easier for you by working through it from a classic ketogenic diet perspective. So it's kind of like a little shortcut I came across with. So we're going to take, I'm going to use this 11-year-old girl as an example. She was to be started on a classic 3-to-1 ratio goal, but struggled with further decreasing carbs under 30 grams per day. She was comfortable at 40 grams per day of carbohydrates and couldn't move forward to further decrease her carbs when I adopted her as my patient. She was not yet in desired level of ketosis, was very inconsistent, marking trace to low urine ketones on most days, and her beta hydroxybutyrate was under 1 millimole per liter. So they really wanted to proceed with a ketogenic diet, but felt stuck. And so what did we do? Applying an MCT oil diet approach would help simply by keeping the diet ratio lower at 1.5 to 1 or lower and calculating at 30 to 40% of total calories as MCT. So could this work? So the plan was to lower the ratio, okay? So very important to work backwards because we need to figure out the percent from calories. Okay, so on a 1,500 calorie diet at 1.5 to 1 ratio, we have a total fat of 128.5 grams of fat, which is 77% of calories, 11% of protein, 40.7 grams of protein, and 12% carbs. So it's 45 grams of carbs. So we want to set an MCT goal of 30 to 40% of calories. So I'm going to show you 2 options. Okay, we can calculate by the full percent that we desire. So for example, if I want 35% of MCT from 1,500 calories, right, that's going to be 525 calories divided by 8.3 calories per gram to give us 63.2 grams of MCT oil per day. And the rest is, long chain triglycerides, so 42%. So that equals 70 grams of fat per day. The other second option is to divide the total fat in half to get your MCT total that you're going to be using. So take half of the fat of the whole, so 128.5, we're going to divide that by 2 and convert to MCT oil. Okay, so half of the 128 is 64.25 times 9. So we're at 578.25 calories divided by 8.3. So 69.6 grams of MCT oil per day, which is your right within the range. You end up with 38.5% MCT oil diet. So macros per day on this with this approach is 69.6 grams of MCT oil, 45 grams of carbohydrate per day, 40.7 grams of protein, and then long chain fat, 64.2. So now with this method, protein might still be lower than in the original proper way of doing it, but you can always increase it. You can lower the ratio a little bit more, increase MCT oil a little more, decrease carb a little more, or decrease long chain fat as your MCT oil increases. The goal is MCT tolerance, target ketone levels, patient satisfaction, and seizure control. So once on the full goal diet, children must adhere to it as strictly as with the classic or any other medical ketogenic diet. Then during the fine-tuning stages for the diet for max benefit and tolerance. So if, for example, if you need more calories or less calories, you can increase or decrease. If more MCT can't be tolerated, right, and you need to go up, then you can decrease the carb and increase the long-chain triglycerides, or decrease the protein instead of the carb, right? And this is also so you can balance out the calories. So meal planning. Another important point is to divide MCT oil evenly into all daily meal plans and snacks. Start low. Okay? You can use food exchange lists, household measurements, use keto diet calculator, other apps, keto calculating spreadsheets, or other carb counting keto apps that are available. And you can use, they may definitely select to use a food scale for the protein and meat portions only, or if they want to have everything in grams, they can. All foods and carbohydrates are allowed except concentrated sweets and sugars. And MCT oil, the MCT oil can be used alone in grilling, baking, blended, or in low heat cooking. Okay, so these are all like really good things. So again, because MCT oil is bland and a bland and tasteless oil, it can be mixed into other fats. You can make MCT mayo or mix it into a salad dressing that is a favorite one. It still has a lot of versatile cooking methods. So as long as it's low heat cooking, you can use it in baking or grilling. Remember, it does have a low smoke point, so we don't want to fry anything, deep fry anything in this oil. It does mix well with some keto formulas. It works very well with home blended whole foods ketogenic diet approach. And the emulsified form of the MCT oil, like Liquigen or Beta Quick, mixes well into formulas and keto drinks, and also offers additional benefits to the acceptance and palatability of MCT oil itself. You can mix it in with non-dairy milk, soups, or mashed potatoes, or cauliflower mash. Most importantly, it is as effective as a classic ketogenic diet in managing intractable epilepsy. So more great reasons for the MCT oil. So it helps produce more ketones per calorie compared to long-chain fats. It produces ketones efficiently. It can increase ketone levels. It can be used in all ketogenic types, like the interchangeably. You can use it in the classic, in the modified Atkins, in the low glycemic diet. It increases carbohydrate allotment in the diet. So when you use an MCT oil diet, you're going to allow more carbohydrates. So one great benefit is that you can, if you have a child that only likes to drink cow's milk, you can use it in milk. You can actually make room to use things like potatoes, bread, cereals, where in other keto diets you can't, where it's a lot harder. It can help with bowel regimen, so you can add it as a supplement in smaller doses to help with constipation. If you're using it in other ketogenic diets, you can use it in fat bombs. So if you need, at any given point, you need a really quick boost, you can mix MCT oil into any of the fat bombs. If you're using a low glycemic treatment diet, addition of MCT oil can also help to transition off to more higher GI carbs, like once you're coming off of it, or if you want to transition to higher GI carbs. You're going to get increased adherence by liberalizing carbs and protein and adding MCT. So more value that your patients are getting through that way. It is an alternative way to transition from a classic to an MCT. Again, just another way to liberalize the diet, especially for patients that are not fully ready to come off the ketogenic diet quite yet, but just want more liberty. And then adding it as a supplement when many carb-containing meds or supplements are inevitable. So I'm sure we've all come across, a patient that's on a lot of supplements or a lot of different medications where we cannot lower the carb containment of those pills or tablets, or lower carb pills and tablets are not available in the pharmacy. So we can add a small dose of the MCT oil along with those medications to help promote the desired level of ketosis. So in conclusion, the success of any diet is based upon compliance or adherence, and MCT, medical ketogenic diet, can increase adherence and satisfaction of your patients. There are now several ketogenic diets types effective in the management of intractable epilepsy, so let's use them. MCT oil allows for a wider variety of food options, less restrictive diet. And there are also many uses and benefits for MCT oil. Using the one diet does not fit all approach. So individualize it, improves patient satisfaction. Okay, we can consider the beneficial characteristics from all the different keto diet types and, select an individualized treatment to increase compliance and improve patient satisfaction. And using the MCT oil diet in your program is going to add more value to your practice. So offer an MCT oil diet as another option to your patients. And that is it. Thank you so much. And we are ready for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. There were some questions that came in throughout the presentation, so we can definitely get started with them.
Yes.
These are all of the references for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
The handouts are available for download. I posted it a couple of times in the Q&A box for you guys, and they will be available on nutritionlearningcenter.com as well. We are recording the webinar, so we will hope to have that up within the next couple of weeks. But for those of you in the U.S., we'll have it up on our nutritionlearningcenter.com website. At the close of the webinar, the SurveyMonkey website will come up as well, so we look forward to your feedback and would love to hear what you have to say. So in terms of our questions, as I said, for the diet calculations, Vanessa, do you use the same estimate of calories for your adult patients as you would for children, or do you adjust it slightly?
Yes, it's all in an individualized approach. So I do always ask my patients for a 3-day diet record. Okay, and of course I assess their weight, their height, their nutritional status, and go from there. So if I have an older or a younger adult that is only eating a certain amount of calories, but their weight is adequate, and I base it upon their 3-day diet record, so I might take that more than what I calculate, what comes out in an actual, calculation. So I weigh both, so I sometimes might get an average, and if it's too far off, then I just use what they are eating. Now, because any ketogenic diet does have a side effect of weight loss, making sure that they are monitoring their weight weekly, so weight loss is not a side effect of this, is important too. So if I need to fine tune and increase calories later, then we can adjust.
Okay, great, thank you. And then another question that came through, how do you have any sort of protocol for gradually increasing MCT oil in your patients' diets to ensure that they maybe tolerate it better?
Yes, so I don't know if that other slide was missed, but so depending on how I'm going to start them, I go, and depending on the child. So if most of our patients are started outpatients, so we do start a lot slower and we increase on a weekly basis, and and making sure that they are tolerating that amount of MCT oil. So like I said, if my goal is 30% of total calories from MCT oil, I might start the first 5 days with only 5% of MCT oil. So if you are giving less of that MCT oil, making sure you are giving an extra snack or whatnot, so for those couple of days, so that they are not receiving less calories as you do give or as you are working up to that MCT, the goal MCT. So I might start as low as 5% of the total calories for the first, 5 days, and then go up. For smaller babies, definitely you want to go slow. So using that 5%. If it's a older child and you feel like, oh, okay, they can easily tolerate it, then I might start a little bit more aggressively. So especially if I'm going up to 50% MCT oil, I might start with 10% of total calories for the first week, and then 20% the second week, 30%, and so forth. So the patient is the one that's really going to be telling you how much and how quickly they are tolerating.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another question. Have you found a difference between emulsified MCT oil or pure MCT oil? Do you feel that one works better than the other?
Can you repeat that question?
The emulsified MCT oil versus the pure MCT oil, does one work better than the other?
I have found not necessarily in that one works. I have had a mix of patients who just either prefer the taste or the emulsified one better than the pure. I have had patients that do not like the emulsified form and they prefer to just drink like tequila shots. They just prefer the shots of the MCT oil. Definitely if I'm working with enterally fed children and in their formulas, and especially if they are on cyclic feedings, I would prefer, I have better results with using an emulsified form, just because it's all evenly distributed in the formula versus separating. So it's just hard when you're using the pure MCT in a formula and the parents or the bedside nurse has to shake the bag every so often so that it disperses evenly. So I would say half-half. Not one is better than the other. It just depends on the situation and it depends on the patient.
Okay. And then how do you get your patients to take their MCT oil? Do you usually incorporate it as part of a recipe or with their foods? Or how, is it just, like you said, is it just they take it from a syringe and that's their MCT oil for the day? Is it just, any tips or tricks?
Yeah. It just really depends on the patient. A lot of the times I will spend like 15, 20 minutes coaching a mom and telling her, blend it into, heavy cream or make a dressing. And then I'll have a 9-year-old kid or 8-year-old and they're like, no, I don't mind just drinking it. So it surprises me. I would think a lot of times I would still think, making it very palatable and making it easy for these younger kids. But you'd be surprised. Some of the younger kids are a little bit more, they're a little bit more, how to say, free-willing to take it in, adventurous, yes, to take it in by mouth and, take it just as a shot. While maybe some of the older ones are picky eaters, especially if they, some kids that don't like anything that's in the texture of oily and everything, you kind of have to, blend it into like a smoothie. You have to blend it in to maybe a milk. And sometimes, you have to, once you go through the 3-day diet records and what their likes and dislikes, you might find out that even though they would fit a perfect MCT oil diet, you find out, you're better off just on a modified Atkins or another diet approach. So it really has helped me to really listen and really see what they're comfortable doing, to see, where they will be. And sometimes I've had patients, that we're working towards that 30%, and I'm only able to get them to 10%. So, but for them, I might use like a combination of a, classic ketogenic diet at like a 2-to-1 ratio with that 10% MCT oil, or, something like that. So it really just depends. They surprise you.
Yeah. And then here's another question about triglyceride levels with MCT oil and high cholesterol. How often do you need to monitor patients' triglyceride levels with MCT oil diets? Have you noticed them starting to trend up while on the MCT oil diet? Is that something you need to be overly concerned about?
Not at all. So the same criteria for monitoring labs in all of the ketogenic diets applies to the MCT oil diet, because you're looking for the same thing. So we monitor the same labs, the blood work, and we do it, as is recommended. So every 3 months we do labs. And in 15 years that I have worked, in more than 15 years actually, that I have worked with the MCT oil diet, I have yet to see a patient on an MCT oil diet that has high triglycerides. And usually those that come in with high triglycerides, within a couple of months, those seem to get better. So no, you just monitor the same way as you would any of your other keto diets. But it is weirdly enough that once you get to the 30 or higher percent, those triglycerides are not an issue.
Okay, I'm just scrolling through. I think I missed a question here. I know a lot of people, there were a couple questions about the website that you had mentioned for recipes, the Matthew's Friends website.
Matthew's
were
Friends.
there any other websites that you...
So Charlie Foundation, yes, Charlie Foundation has some recipes that are good for that. If they're on KetoCal, they can go to myketocal.com. And there's a lot of recipes with the emulsified form of the MCT oil. But for a lot of the just pure MCT oil and, homemade recipes, Matthew's Friends, I think, because they use that diet a lot more popularly in Europe than, we do here in the United States. Also, Matthew's Friends has a branch of their organization in Canada. So if you visit, I think, the Matthew's Friends Canada website, they might have some recipes as well.
Okay, thank you. Here's the question I knew I saw. It says, in my country, there are no MCT formulas. What are the main food sources? So are there any foods that are higher in MCT content?
No, because again, the MCT oil is derived, it's extracted from coconut oil and, as shorter links. So it's not a whole food. And make note that coconut oil is not the same as MCT. So it's very important to address this and educate your patients on. I've had patients that come and say, they find some liquid coconut oil at their local food store, and they're not getting the same results, and then we come to find out they were using the wrong thing. So coconut oil does have a certain percent, I believe it's like somewhere like 50 or 60% of MCTs, but it's not going to give you the same results as using pure MCT oil. So, but nowadays with Amazon, and I think it's not that impossible to get it from the internet. But yeah, no, in terms of actual foods, there are none that I know that because it's an extracted chain links. So they're short links extracted from certain fats.
All right. So I think that is all of the questions. There was one question we didn't get to, comparing the classic versus modify the MCT diet, which we will email you about. I'll have Vanessa answer that just in the interest of time.
Yes.
So I will email you the answer to that question. And again, if you all can fill out our survey, we would appreciate your feedback. And thank you all for attending today's webinar. Vanessa, thank you for this fantastic presentation.
Oh, thank
It was
you.
really wonderful. And I wanted to let everybody know that our next webinar will not be on a Monday. It will be on a Wednesday, August 12th. We will have 3 dietitians speaking for us. Jessica Brown, Laura Doherty, and Lindsay Thompson will be presenting on food allergies and blenderized diets in medical ketogenic diet patients. So it'll be Wednesday, August 12th instead of on a Monday. I know most of our Keto U series has been on a Monday, so this one will be a little bit of a change of pace. So we look forward to bringing that to you. Again, Vanessa, thank you for this wonderful presentation on the MCT ketogenic diet, and thank you all for attending.